Right, where's chapter 3? I need a thing now for books. Like a book divider, whatever it is. Whoa, I just skipped all the way to chapter 7. What is that about? We don't want to be doing that. Oh, chapter 3. There we go. Landed right on it. Here we go then, baby. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Frank was beginning to get very tired of sitting by his assistant in the lab and having nothing particular to do other than radiobiology experiments. Once or twice, he had peeped into his journals, or those of others, but nothing much took his interest or shook his world. He kept a small, ancient wireless on one of the windowsills on the 3rd floor. He loved the juxtaposition of such a cracky old piece of equipment having placed amidst the hum of all the latest technologies. The weather report sputtered to life in the fading afternoon light as Frank turned the volume up. Perfect, you need a bookmark. I do need a bookmark, indeed. Typhoon, he heard. Massive! With wind, rain, and tsunami warnings. This would explain the cool gusts which had started to blow and the metallic smell of imminent rain. Frank looked out the open window at all the foliage. It would be grateful for the downpour it was about to receive. The jungle behind the lab fell into an eerie silence. Literally, the calm before the storm. As all the animals burrowed their way into the holes and crevices and knots and cracks, behavior not unlike Frank's. Sirens from the military base began to wail in the distance, as if it heralded some ominous calamity. This was actually truer than most would realize. Frank woke the next morning, badly hungover, after a harrowing night of tempest. The typhoon had fully passed, leaving a whisper, quiet and sunny dawn. Groaning, he slowly sat up to recollect the previous night's antics, before the tranquility was shattered by the rumble of vehicles approaching the compound. He squinted through the slats of the blind as a beam of light shot through. He adjusted his eyes to see 4 large army jeeps and a tank pull up in front of the lab. Even from the 3rd floor, he could hear the thumping on the door. Who the fuck is in charge? And do any of you Japs speak English here? At that moment, Honda ran through the lab door and looked at Frank alarmingly. I don't speak English, he said with beads of sweat growing above his eyebrows. I need you to take care of this. Gathering his thoughts, Frank nodded and made a dismissing wave gesture at Honda, implying that he would handle it. The banging on the door got louder, and as he trotted down the concrete stairs, Frank opened the door to see Sergeant Benson, a large man with a beer gut. Hey. It's your dad, Avisha. And a piggish face staring at him. His nose was I said that because you said you had like a beer belly. So that's why I said that. I'm sorry. Beer belly, bros. His nose was as red as a strawberry, and his eyebrows were intense, as if he was about to eat the meanest ass of all time. Oof. I know that intense face. Do you own this facility? He bellowed. No, sir. This facility is run by my supervisor, Mr. Masayoki. Honda. Frank to look over at Honda, who gave him a firm nod. We're a private research facility in the mountains of... We're a private research facility. In the mountains of Okinawa? Benson asked, smiling as if he had found something good. Yes. Documents. Now. May I ask, why are you visiting? I said documents, Jew-nosed Jap. Are you fucking deaf? Yeah, I'll get them right away, sir. Frank rushed back to his lab and hid whatever evidence he could. Bichero, I need you to give them our documents. Hide everything. My name Bitchero, he replied. Frank returned with his passport, some files containing the breeding habits of starfish in the Ryukyu waters, and the results of the weekend boat races in Osaka. Benson pursued the documents. Well, shit, boys. We hit the jackpot. We got ourselves a Japanese German. Oh, shit. The soldier standing behind Benson smirked and widened their eyes. I don't see an issue here, sir, Frank said. Well, why would they have a Japanese German working in a lab like this in Okinawa? We are privately owned. We do peaceful scientific research. What exactly do you do? Cancer research, sir. Since you guys really fucked us with the whole radiation thing. Don't get smart with me. Benson rammed the clip of his rifle into the back of Frank's head, and he fell to his knees. Oh, it was Frank who was saying that. Oh, oops. Soz. He held Frank's head up by jamming the forestock of the rifle into his neck. Frank's nose began to bleed. You're the two things I hate most combined into one, you sorry son of a bitch. And whatever the fuck is going on here, I don't like it. He then spat in Frank's face and walked out of the room. I'll be back, he said, as he kicked over a table. After the rumbles of the jeep faded into the distance, Honda came back into the room. I'm terribly sorry you had to go through that, he said, as he handed Frank a tissue to mop up his bloody nose. People fear and despise what they don't understand, Frank said, as he stood and put an ice pack to his head wound. He was raised that way, like an American. I cannot blame a man for his upbringing. Honda nodded and looked down at his feet. Plus, next time, I'll be ready to fight back. He took me by surprise. That won't be necessary, Honda interrupted quickly. Benson will do whatever he can to have his place shut down. If you show weakness and fight back, he can cancel all operations here for untruly conduct. We are a private company after all. We would hate to see our fundings, not to mention your talents, go to waste. Frank tasted blood in his mouth. He was biting his lip out of frustration. Fair enough. I will continue as planned. From that day, Sergeant Benson came every week without fail. The only surprise was the time of day. Sometimes he'd kick the door in at the crack of dawn, and other times it was right in the middle of dinner. On the odd occasion, he would enter through the back door at midnight. Regardless of the time, he would constantly hold a gun up to Frank's face and proceed to turn the lab inside out. Benson knew something was up, and he didn't like it. He was totally obsessive about it. Even the other soldiers viewed Benson's frequent visit as a fanatical hate crime. He kept saying... Oh god, I'm sorry. He kept saying, a Jap German in Okinawa, working with radiation. Does that not sound suspicious to you at all? Frank was rarely the sole target. He would sometimes terrorize Bitchero, bombarding him with questions. Who the fuck are you? My name Bitchero. Do you speak English? My name Bitchero. Yes, I know. My name Bitchero. What the fuck? My name Bitchero. What is wrong with this guy? My name Bitchero. Shut the fuck up. My name Bitchero. Two viewers. Marin, is that you? Probably not. She's too busy sweeping, bless her. 2 months after the first visit, Benson drove up to the compound more aggressively than normal. He stormed out of his jeep and burst through the door holding his rifle. It was quite clear that he'd been drinking. You two, up against the wall, he yelled at 2 young employees, no older than 24. They did as they were told and lined up. Benson, you can bully me all you want, but please, don't bring the employees into this, Frank calmly said. They're just janitors. How come I never see your notes or clipboard lying around anywhere, Frank, you fucking autist? Benson replied. We mail them off to HQ every day. Where is your HQ? I don't know, Sergeant Benson. Bullshit, and stop twitching your fingers like that. I really don't know, sir. It's classified. I don't see any point in your research, Frank. You can't cure cancer. I believe we can. I believe our nations can help each other with this new research. Yeah, when pigs fly. Yeah, who am I fucking kidding? You'll never fly. Benson's eyes widened and his lips stiffened. At that very moment, for the first time in his life, Frank regretted his sharp wit. This is your fault. You're doing, Benson said as he lifted his rifle and shot both of the employees multiple times in the chest. A canvas of blood splattered across the grey concrete wall. Frank watched their bodies drop on top of each other. Honda was looking out the window, waiting for the nightmare to end. Next time, it'll be you and your little bitch-a-row friend. Benson began to head out. I would have killed you, but I like to see you suffer. He and the other soldiers strutted out, leaving the lab, the pin drop quiet. They'd all seen death before, but not in a while. For Frank, it brought back with a scream of all of the suicides he'd seen in Okinawa during the war. Line after line of men, women, and even children taking their own lives, rather than suffer at the hands of the enemy. Frank saw this so vividly, he began to tremble. Everyone immediately went back to work. It was all they could do. Hey, boy, said Bichero. Frank buried both of the employees later that night. He didn't ask anyone to help, because he felt responsible for their deaths. It was still typhoon season, and it had just stopped raining a few hours before. It made the soil soft and easy to dig through. Frank took a break from the shovel and looked over at the bodies. They were pale and limp. He laughed. It was a defense mechanism that worked for him. It's all cancer. Everything is fucking cancer, he said, laughing to himself. I work with cancer, act like cancer, and by saying cancer, I get people killed. I am cancer. His laughter echoed up into the mountains, and all the chirping crickets and birds went dead silent. He continued to dig. Frank wasn't afraid of Benson, but he was afraid of not being able to complete his research. But he knew at that moment it was done. He would have his revenge on Benson. I'll fucking kill him, Frank would say to Bichero after another of Benson's weekly visits. After we complete the research and take back our land, I will literally slit his throat in front of his wife and children. Saying things like that made him feel better and motivated him to finish his work. If he ever felt discouraged at any point during the day, he would daydream about the blissful release that would come with murdering Benson. What would his blood taste like? Would his children die too? Would his wife's pussy be tight? All kinds of dark questions swarmed through his head. Frank would spend every day by the graves, watering a couple flowers that had managed to sprout from the compost. Frank never cared for other people. In fact, he didn't even know the name of the 2 employees buried in front of him. I don't care about these people. Why am I still here every day? Frank asked as Honda emerged from the trees. You're a compassionate person who is driven by narcissism, by your environment. You care, but only because you're responsible for their deaths. Otherwise, it wouldn't be an issue. Frank laughed. Yeah, I'm quite rotten. Quite filthy. Bichero should have died instead. They both laughed. Ayy, said Bichero from inside the building. Listen, Mr. Honda. I need to tell you something. But you can't tell the board until I've completed my research. Honda was listening. I am most likely dying. At first I thought my cells were multiplying at a rapid rate, but I discovered that it is actually my chromosomes which are splitting. He went on into detail that night, explaining everything to Honda about his research to date. I've never heard of chromosomes duplicating before, said Honda. That should instantly kill you. It doesn't matter, said Frank. We can use your gifts for other things. There's no point in attempting to create a weapon that may or may not work if there's a chance of you dying before that. We should get you out of this lab right away, especially away from Benson. I'm going to die anyway. At least let me finish my research. I know I was born to finish this. I'll leave blueprints to a wiser generation. He never got the chance. It began in the midnight hour of Tuesday. Frank watching phlegm react to bursts of radiation. Suddenly got a mind-splitting headache. Clutching his cranium, he dropped to his knees and let out an agonizing cry before staggering to the refrigerator and grabbing a bottle of milk. He quickly downed it before collapsing onto the bed to sleep. But sleep was his tormentor tonight. As he tossed back and forth, the nightmares came to him. Those were not, however, your run-of-the-mill nightmares of falling or being chased or drowning or clowns. If only Frank were to escape that lightly. These nightmares were so vivid, it was impossible to distinguish night from day, spirit from matter, or reality from virtual reality. The pain inside his fractured head was unbearable. And then they came. The numbers. Clusters of numbers tumbled across his field of vision. Stream after stream of them. He had no idea what they were or what they meant. He only knew that there were no escaping from them, or the fear of them manifesting when they came. For hours, Frank would lie rigid with terror, watching the numbers scroll, and hoping with all his heart that they would stop. Occasionally in the dreams, he would also see images. A silhouette effigy, a tree on a hilltop, a dark figure of unknown origin and nature, but clearly powerful and mighty. This dark, fearful form was fused to the trees, as though crucified on it, repressed by it, yet somehow sustaining it. The image conveyed an ancient mystery, tragic and formidable, of agony and wonder, and it horrified Frank to his very core. In the end, he would wake up in the morning light, feeling a sense of total depletion, and lie there until his strength returned. And when it did, he needed to unleash his fear and frustration at the visitations. Bichero was there. The nightmares lasted for months and drove Frank to the brink of insanity. It had not been for Bichero, Purlair's presence, Frank would have slid into certain madness. Yet, there was another element to the nightmares that brought a slither of intrigued mist to the dread that Frank experienced. Every night, the nightmares would conjure up the numbers, but Frank began to notice that it was the same number segments, but being revealed to him each time. He began to agonize over them, analyzing them, reciting them, but their meaning eluded him. One night, tormented by the nightmares, Frank resisted the urge to go into the town and hustle, and instead spent the evening crunching the numbers once again. Yet, his inability to decipher them was more than his erudite mind could handle. He began to smash beakers and test tubes around the lab, overturning equipment and hurling animals. Bichero was madly trying to clean up after him in his fury. Frank was unaware of the gash that had opened from the downside of his hand, or of the blood streaming from it. He began to spin in circles, reciting the numbers over and over. The claret flowed from his wound, forming a circle of crimson on the ground around him. Again and again, in intone to the numbers spinning and spilling and recalling and chanting. All of a sudden, the floor beneath him began to rumble and pitch. The tilting cracked and the tiling cracked and the walls split. The ceiling caved in, first in small clusters, then in huge panels. Enormous steel beams fell to the ground, smashing everything beneath them. The lights on the ceiling flickered off, but an ethereal luminescence now coming from the source beyond the lab remained. A violent shaking and howling wind followed, from which deep chasms opened up all around him, and the equipment, the lab animals, and the flooring crumbled away. The very foundation of the facility became brittle and started to break, dropping away into the darkness below. The noise which accompanied all of this was a thunderous, shattering eardrums and arresting hearts, as though a trumpet heralding an apocalypse. The world as they had all known it ceased to be, exterminated in seconds. Bichero clung for his life to to an ultra-centrifuge that stubbornly held to Frank's central workstation. That's a big word, dude. That's a big word. "My name is Bichero," he screamed, with wild eyes. Nothing remained of the lab but the circle of flooring that Frank was standing on, still encrusted in crimson, that was fast fragmenting under his feet. Everything then fell away completely into eternal suffering. A thick, soupy darkness surrounded him, and deformed hands, aged and tormented, reached up from it, grabbing and pulling. Voices called in falsetto screams and guttural moans, begging for release and salvation. The awful cacophony of the destruction that had subsided, leaving an eerie sound vacuum which amplified the cries of the tormented souls. A chilly wind blew. The contorted limbs and distorted heads with their unhinged jaws, stitched up eyes and melting flesh were of human and beastly forms, their only fellowship being in the writing in their agony. Again and again, they desperately reached up, flinching and twitching in rage and wretchedness. Plumes of toxic odors, acidic and pungent to the very back of the throat, wafted up in ever great dispersion. It seemed to be lawless to the sense, so that what could be seen could also be felt, what could be heard could be tasted, and what could be smelt could be seen. As such, the sulfuric stench contained an anemic glow which rose up into what had, until very recently, been air, giving everything a dull, rotting appearance. It seeped into every crevice and orifice. Screaming was one's only release, yet it only served to exacerbate the suffering. Other than Frank, Bichero was the last semblance of life to remain. Chest deep in damnation, he held fast to Frank's ankle, but the soulless hands were on him and around him, pulling at him, wrenching at his garments and gouging their gnarled digits deep into his flesh. The young turd had fight in him. "My name is Bichero!" he continued to shriek. He swung wildly at the ogres and even tried to bite them, but it had no effect other than to further excite them. In the end, their appendages entered his ears, his mouth, his eyes, and with one final shake of his leg, Frank flicked him off into the abyss for good. He fell into the darkness with a final blood-curdling, "My name, Bitchero!" An overriding sense of misery extinguished any remaining flicker of hope or reprieve for Frank. He looked up into the portal that was open above him, a circle of ominous light. It was in no way inviting and invoked terror almost equal to that of the blackness beneath him. He feared for his life to enter the gateway, but the overriding dread of the engulfing abyss below, with its fill of destitute souls and screaming remorse, left him with no choice. He would go. He raised his palms and ceased to resist. "Howreyam viam vestram," he said, and then he was gone. I actually don't know what language he said there. That wasn't Japanese. What was he even saying, bro? Right. That is chapter 3. Ooh, boy. So, Frank just realized that he can create portals. That the nightmares he was having, I think that was Chinese. I don't know. It didn't look Chinese, so I don't know. But yeah, so Frank has just realized that he can create portals into some other worlds. We don't know what yet, but other worlds. Who knows? He just has to make a blood ring and say the numbers that was in his nightmares, and now he can create. This book has a lot of big words. I like it. Yeah, see, I told you, mate. I like this book. Like, just completely smashed my expectations of what this book would be. It's all written just by George Miller as well. Like Filthy Frank. Like all these guys, these dudes here. It's written by that just him. It's just written by George Miller. No one else. It was only him who wrote this book as well. So it's just like, this man can do anything. He can become 20 different characters. He can be a music artist, and he can be an incredible author. So it's just, this man is just like fucking, he's a jack of all trades, dude. George Miller is a great writer. That man is amazing. I know, right? God damn, that guy's crazy, dude. He's one talented motherfucker, I'll tell you that now. Right then. Again, very short chapter. Very short chapter. So, chapter 4 it is right now. We're just going to jump straight into chapter 4, baby. The boy with greasy hair, unwashed hair, lowered himself down the last few feet of rock and began to pick his way towards the sea. He had no idea where he was. It was perfectly still, perfectly quiet, and the landscape appeared in silhouettes. The expanse above him was shadowed, yet without cloud. It was impossible to make out any sort of distance in relation to it. He sat on an ice cold rock. I've seen one-page chapters, so what the fuck, dude? That is ridiculous. He sat on an ice-cold rock and looked out over a sea of liquid so black it could have been crude oil. Gnarled and twisted hands continued to reach up out of it as they had before, but this time in silence. He watched them grasp in desperation, yet felt no emotion, only emptiness. This place was weird, dreamlike. It had a stronger sense of reality than he had ever known, but it was hallucinatory as well. In this realm, there were nothing other than huge, frozen rocks and an ocean of lost souls stretching out from it. There was no atmosphere, no warmth, no color, no fear, no joy, no desire, and no time. As such, there was no telling how long he had been here, or how long he would be here. Presently, from within the confines of the shadows, something dark was fumbling along. He wasn't sure what to make of it at first, and watched till the intenseness of his gaze was able to form an image. Then, the creature stepped from the mirage onto clear ice, and he saw that the darkness was not all shadows, but mostly flesh. The creature, an unsightly humanoid, was of singular matter, and one color from head to foot. He drew near and sat beside the boy. Though a total stranger in a foreign world, there was neither any sense of alarm nor of relief. The two observed each other for a period, and then the creature spoke. "Frank," he addressed the boy in a deep, rich tone. How do you know my name?" "I was sent here."
"By who?"
"By higher powers." Frank sat and observed the entity before him.
"Am I in hell?"
"No."
"Surely this can't be heaven."
"No."
"So what is this place?"
"We are in between worlds, off the map, literally nowhere."
"And what are we doing here?"
"Nothing, of course, but I have been sent to you to bring revelation."
"Revelation? Revelation of what?"
"Revelation of the beginning and of the paradigyms."
"What about the end?"
"I don't have that authority."
"What happened to my world?"
"Your world no longer exists. I am tempted to say that it never did, but that might be misleading. Suffice to say, you're no longer in that frequency and never can be again." Frank studied his companion closely. His face was rimmed, as though by a tight circle of light, and his head occasionally gave a mild twitch. He seemed serene but occupied.
"Who are you?"
"My name is Franic.
You've got to be shitting me.
Well, I'm also known as Pink Guy."
I think I'll go with Pink Guy.
God damn, this book, man. Frank assumed, in the grey hues of that place, that his flesh, in the right light, had to be a shade of pink. "Listen carefully, Frank. Life as we know it, in all of its fullness, is now to be revealed to you."
"Speak on, dear friend."
All of a sudden, the gravity of the situation made Frank start to speak like an idiot. "All life and matter is contained within 3 known omniverses, each of which contains any number of universes. The omniverse is divided into dozens of dimensions. Each dimension is divided into millions of realms." He looked at Frank to see if he was comprehending. The pink creature spoke with a voice that seemed not his own. Indeed, in most other realms, he would only have been capable of communicating in series of grunts and squeals. But here, he spoke with a somber tone and a beautiful timbre.
"Are there any black people in these omniverses?"
asked Frank. "What do you think?" asked Pink Guy. There was a pregnant silence before they both burst out laughing.
"This really must be the future then,"
laughed Franks. Despite being flung into the unknown world of darkness, Frank's garbage 1940s humor stayed intact. "There are many life forms throughout the omniverse, Frank," the pink character said, returning to sobriety. "Many, and these entities essentially fall, or are placed,
into one of the 7 tiers of beings. Who decided that?
Frank asked. Pink Eye ignored this question as one of utter stupidity. He continued.
The bottom tier contains the wretched. The wretched are those who have been confined to the abyss. And the infernos. They exist, but only in a form known as suffering and pain.
I'm guessing these hands, he said, gesturing out to the sea.
Yes, they have been condemned.
For what? For... He struggled to find the right words. For damages. Frank looked off to the edge of the rock as one of the many wretched humanoid shadows swarmed towards him, reaching out with her skeletal hands, asking for another chance. Its mouth opened, but nothing came out. Frank could feel the warmth leaving his body, as if its soul was being chipped away by the second. He quickly broke eye contact. Pink Eye saw Frank's discomfort and cleared his throat.
The second tier, from the bottom, contains the brute beasts, lower than human, and other humanoid creatures. They exist but in lesser form, and with normal consciousness.
They can neither be elevated
from their level, nor condemned from it. They toil all their days as servants of those who exist above. To those above them they are dominated and pitted. To the wretched, the beasts are free to secure, and the envy of their sorry souls.
As he said this, Frank continued to watch the knotted limbs stretching up from the Black Sea. He was still not entirely comfortable with this entity before him, and so watched him with cautious eyes.
The third tier,
Pink Eye continued,
hosts the mere mortals. You would be familiar with these. A somewhat sad and conflicted mob. They live as quasi-existence in worlds in which they procreate and kill, create and destroy, love and hate. No one really knows quite what to do with them. There's minimal intervention at this point. They are sort of a work in progress.
Frank looked down as he heard this.
I was trying to make the world a better place,
he mumbled.
Pink Eye said. By melting flesh?
He moved on without another word.
The fourth tier, and fourth from the top, are the rank and files. This includes entities like you and me, Frank.
Frank looked up, perplexed.
I'm not a mere mortal? Far from it, Frank. You are a rank and file. What's more?
He looked intensely at Frank as he said this.
You are the only one that has ever transcended from mere mortal to rank and file. Suffice to say, there's a lot of interest in you.
I'm the only one? The corner of Frank's mouth broke into a proud grin. That makes me kind of special then, doesn't it?
Whether this turn of events is fortunate for you or unfortunate is yet to be determined. I strongly suspect the latter.
Frank's shoulders slumped as hearing this.
I warn you that this situation is developed not necessarily to your advantage.
He looked at Frank with steely eyes.
That's why I was here to send you. I have to come get to you before.
He grew nervous, and his voice trailed off to a whisper.
Before the others do.
Who sent you?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? Why would you come if you didn't know?
I felt compelled.
How did this happen? Frank said. I didn't work for this. I didn't seek it out nor want it.
It's impossible to tell. Maybe you were just in the right place at the right time. Or the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe you were a pawn in a plot orchestrated by higher powers. I apologize. Or it's possible that you were never even human from the start.
Frank pondered these possibilities. None of them appealed to him.
So I'm a reconciled?
He mused.
What does that even mean? How am I any different from a mere mortal? Reconciles can appear in many different forms, including humanoid form, and are able to travel between omniverses, dimensions, and realms.
How? Frank asked.
It's what humans would call chromosomes. Chromosomes are everything beyond the world you were ever living in. Chromosomes are the universal mean of currency, time, travel, and power. When your chromosomes began to multiply, you became a full Rakenfile, and this made you both an asset and a target. Your chromosomes are still progressively multiplying at a dangerously fast rate. Entities will fear you and hunt you for your chromosomes. And whenever they are used, sold, or stolen, you will need to replenish them quickly, or terrible things will happen.
He paused before knowing, looking over at the iceberg they were sitting on.
I know,
he said forlornly.
The fifth tier are the Chimpillars. The Chimpillars are powerful. They travel the realms, shadowing the Rakenfiles, pursuing them for their chromosomes and pressing them into their services.
Pink Eye began to sweat as he said this.
They are many, and they can be savage.
He was whispering now, and looking about, as though simply uttering a name could bring devastation.
Several of them are pursuing me ruthlessly, and have sworn to pursue you as well. There is no escaping them. They will find you, and all you can do is delay it for as long as possible, and hope that you can escape without too much loss.
Chimpillars? Frank said. In a flash, Pink Eye had to... Frank asked. In a flash, Pink Eye had his finger to his lips.
Say nothing of them.
But who are they? Why would we want my chromosomes? Franks wondered. Pink Eye continued, dismissing the question as more mindless drivel.
The 6th and 7th tiers are shrouded in mystery. Nobody in the tiers below can say with any certainty who or what reigns in these 2 tiers, or even if there are 2 tiers. Rumor has it that the 6th tier belongs to the Peace Lords, but few would even dare to state that publicly.
The Peace Lords? Frank repeated. I'm guessing the Chimpillars are bad guys and the Peace Lords are good guys.
Then you guess like a moron. Some Chimpillars are good, others are evil, and some are yet to make their alliances known. What you have to understand, Frank, is that there are hostilities in the Omniverse, and loyalty is currently a very fluid notion. The Peace Lords are extremely powerful, yet no one knows where their alliances lie. Certainly not us, and perhaps not even amongst the Peace Lords themselves. Some are the very essence of evil, yet wrap themselves in light. Others are pure goodness, yet veil their loyalties with cloud of darkness and deception.
Who is the top tier? Who has supreme power? Frank was agitated as he asked this.
The top tier,
Pink Eye said. He stopped there, lost for words. And Frank looked at him agog.
Tell me about the top tier. You're to reveal this to me, right? Who or what is at the top tier of being?
Frank glared at Pink Eye as he asked this. Pink Eye appeared reluctant to speak on, as if revealing any such names or identities or titles or presence could see him instantly thrown amongst the wretched.
At the top tier,
he said with holy awe,
if the stories are true, is the ultimate god.
Pink Eye held Frank's tricep tightly and pulled him near to conclude his revelation.
We think the ultimate god is Chin Chin,
he whispered firmly into Frank's ear. Frank sat in wonder as he heard those words.
The ultimate Chin Chin,
he mouthed.
Chin Chin. Or so we think,
whispered Pink Eye, leaning in again. They both sat there in reluctance.
The ultimate god is the creator, owner, the lord of all. He is the great one.
Pink Eye paused again.
But the Peace Lords are becoming very powerful, and they are uniting and amassing many Chimpillars to serve under them. They have untold numbers of chromosomes in their arsenal, and they are rebelling against any force that oppose them. No one knows anymore where the real power might lie. No one knows who's in control.
He lowered his voice back down to a whisper again.
The tiers are shifting,
he said, excited and horrified.
The natural order is changing. More and more entities are resisting their innate position and are storming each other's tiers. They do this by stealing chromosomes. It is the ultimate moral depravity. And it can, in effect, not only elevate them to higher tiers, but potentially alter the constitution of others, destining them to lower tiers.
But the Peace Lord, said Frank, won't they condemn those who do these things?
As I said, Frank, the tiers are shifting. Dimensions and realms are warping. This has never happened before. The omniverses no longer have the order that we once knew. Some are even becoming too powerful for the Peace Lords, Frank,
he said, looking about. He reserved his greatest gravity for this summation.
Some are contesting the ultimate god.
The air in which they were sitting. The air in which they were sitting suddenly felt colder and damper. There was not a breath of wind, but Frank felt a coolness run across his brow.
One more thing, Frank.
He looked at Pink Eye.
Chin Chin himself is coming for you. Your transition has provoked him.
Do you mean he's coming to get me, or he's coming for me to help?
Frank, you are completely expendable, and Lord Chin Chin will spare nothing to get your chromosomes to secure his own position. Believe me, the wretched will have nothing on you. Once Chin Chin is done with you, you will wish you were swimming in that abyss.
Frank swallows hard.
That's why I'm here. To protect you from Chin Chin. To take you from the furthest realms and deepest recesses of the Omniverse to keep you from being found.
Frank sat in silence, processing all this. The iceberg they were sitting on remained static, and the sea around them continued to display in silent agony. What Frank said next took Pink Eye completely by surprise. I don't want to be a rake and file.
What?
I want to go back down to being a mere mortal. I want to return to once what I was. I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to be hunted by Lord Chin-Chin. I want to go back. Pink Eye snapped at him.
It's too late for that now, my friend. There's no turning back. You are what you are, and you must live that life you have now.
Why? Why does it have to be too late? You said yourself, can't be sure what the upper tier holds. The Peace Lords are still powerful. They might very well be forces for good. And what of the ultimate god? Whoever he is. Why wouldn't he have the power and the inclination to restore me? Between them all, there must be a way. Surely they can make me mortal again. They can stop my chromosomes from multiplying and return me to the life I had. Pink Eye wanted to ignore this as another sentiment of monumental idiocy. But he could see how determined Frank was.
That might be true,
he said.
But what is possible is not the same as what is probable, and the whim of the rank and file is no match for the will of a lord.
I want to meet one of the great powers, Frank said, as though stating a universal right. I want to meet a Peace Lord. He paused again, processing, and then he came out with, I want to meet the ultimate god. I want to plead my case. Pink Eye shook his head.
You're a damn fool. You understand nothing. Leave that idea right now, I tell you. Leave it, and have nothing more to do with it.
Frank stood and whipped his hands on his shirt as though to signal a cessation in the matter. We can't stay here forever, he said. Pink Eye rose with him.
Let's see what this place has then.
They walked off with another word. But they walked off without another word. Side by side. Yet the conversation trailed behind them, like a chest being dragged by a chain. They passed along slippery, narrow gullies, with jagged icy daggers, protruding at head height, and small stalagmite formations underfoot. The landscape would change in appearance, but not nature. They walked along the broad, open glacier-like fields, climbed walls of glass, and stepped down into bulky gorges. Yet, there was never a sound, nor a smell, nor a sense of fear or excitement. It was as though they were in their own bubble, separated from other life and matter, all other sentiment and spirit. While there was no point in staying put, there was clearly no point in continuing either. Eventually, Pink Eye spoke.
I have coordinates for you, Frank.
They stopped walking and faced each other.
These coordinates will take you to a safe place. It's right off the grid. No one will find you there.
That's not necessarily good news, Frank returned.
It's good news for now,
he said, looking at the limbs reaching up from the expanse around them.
Just recite them as I give them to you, and create the same circle of blood, and you will be taken there.
What about you?
My work is done.
You're not coming too?
I don't have enough chromosomes to travel further, and this place allows for no more replenishment.
He looked stoic.
This is the end of the road for me. They will come. They will find me.
You came to warn me on a suicide mission?
Suicide? No. But there is no more life ahead for me. My future ceases to exist here.
Though he barely knew Pink Eye, and he had never really cared for anybody before in his life, hearing this was like a stab in the chest. I will come back for you, said Frank, with a newfound ethic.
It will be too late. They will find me here before you return, and they will be condemned me without a moment's hesitation.
Use my chromosomes. Frank insisted. If you use mine, then we could both go through. Pink Eye shook his head.
That wouldn't leave you enough chromosomes to travel on if you needed to. That would be a very dangerous state to be in.
But the place I'm going is safe, right? I could stay there until my chromosomes replenish, and then move on. Pink Eye considered this with caution. It made sense, but it was not part of the plan. I have no idea where I'm going, Frank continued. What to do there, or when, or where to move again. I need you to come with me. Surely we're safer together. Pink Eye squatted before his new friend, deep in thought.
Let's go then,
he said, looking up. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Frank.
You will need to cut your hand and create a circle of blood around us as before. I will recite the coordinates.
What if you get the coordinates? Wrong voice. What if you get the coordinates wrong? Frank asked casually, almost as a joke. Pink Eye responded with a look that shook Frank to his very core.
Then heaven help us,
he said, breaking into another sweat.
This passing question of...
Wait, what? Oh, he said, breaking out into another sweat. Yeah. The passing question of Frank's led to a flurry of others, which suddenly took him to a dark place. Who was this Pink Eye, really? How did Frank know he could trust him? What if he were the only one of the lackeys of an evil peace lord? What if he were a peace lord? What if he were Chin Chin himself? Frank caught in the moment, came right out of it, with a last question, and had barked it to Pink Eye's face. If I were Chin Chin, he retorted, I would have stolen your chromosomes and finished you off in a flash. You would be bathing with your friends right there in the sea of the infernal suffering. Frank, still breathing heavily, looked Pink Eye in the eyes. Good answer, he said, throwing clenched teeth.
Good answer.
Frank walked over to a shard of ice and ran his hand along it. The life force flowed freely from the wound. The whole bit where it said, if I were Chin Chin, I would have stolen your... That was Pink Eye. That was my bad. I apologize. Sorry about that. The life force flowed freely from the wound. He returned to Pink Eye, who had already begun reciting the coordinates. Frank made the crimson circle around them both, before standing back to back with his comrade. Over and over, Pink Eye called the numbers and letters louder and louder with increasing zeal. Frank prepared for destruction. As Pink Eye continued to call, Frank continued to brace. On and on he called with a voice that rose up over the sea. It soon reached fever pitch, bursting with prolepsis. Then suddenly, he slumped. What happened? Asked Frank.
I don't know. It's not working. It's not working. Nothing's happening.
Are you sure you got the coordinates right?
Are you sure you used the right blood?
Pink Eye shot back, offended. Frank began to move from his spot as he did. He felt the squelch of soft ground beneath him. It's soft, he said.
So it is,
Pink Eye returned. Indeed, the land outside of the circle remained as hard as a diamond, but the ground inside continued to soften and liquefy. The more they trod within the circle, the more pulpy the ground became, until before long they were ankle deep in water. To hasten the progress, they began to jump up and down, being very careful to stay within the confines of the red band. Neither of them were Neither of them were aware of the rate at which they were sinking into the hole, so suddenly being waist deep in water took them both by surprise. The greater shock came moments later when Frank found himself on his own, in near total darkness, overtaken by torrents of water. He was drowning. At first, his sole awareness was of his impending death. Yet, this fear was easily surpassed by the torment of the wretched as he brushed by them. Souls of children long deceased, yet still perished, grabbed at his fingers and toes, begging for help, pleading for mercy, wailing and cursing, tossing about in the torment and lying hold of him. They stared at him through empty eye sockets and wailed through the stitched molds. They would float by him, writhing and holding their bellies in agony as they inflated and then burst open. From the wound, new infants would ooze out before their bellies swelled and ruptured, and so the nightmare would go on. Other babies, gliding with awkward flinches through the murkiness, would suddenly stop and then turn completely inside out. Muscles and bones would remain frailly bound together, but strings of intestines and sinew would be flung off into the swell. As such, the current surrounding him was a thick, amniotic soup. The infants were indistinctively grabbing and gnawing on each other as they drifted about, yet a sad semblance of compassion developed in which they would pull out at their own teeth to spare the others. But their teeth would rapidly and constantly grow back. Frank felt their agony. He felt their pain in all sorts of forms and degrees. His screams became bawls. "I'm sorry!" as he roared. "I'm sorry I can't save you!" The grasping and calling, the sorrow and the sobbing continued, unbathed, until Frank took one final gasp, filled his lungs with the fluid, and floated off to his quiet end. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. So how's that so far, Avishai? If you're still here and awake. How'd that sound? This concludes chapter 4, I guess. It does. Ooh. That little Jewish German boy, that little Japanese German boy, drowned. He gone drowned in his circle of teleportation. That was still one of the greatest things I've ever seen. What do you mean? Are these reading streams? Are you liking the voices? I feel like the voices are a little bit better today. I keep mixing up some of them, just because they sometimes in the story they don't say which one's who's who until like right at the very end. So as I'm reading it, and then at the very end they'll say, and I'm like, oops. Yep, I like the reading streams. Sup's fun. Hell yeah, dude. I mean, were the voices okay? Do I not put too much emphasis on doing different voices, or do you like the voices I've been doing so far for the both of them? Voices are great, yeah? Is the volume okay for the sound? Because I can see that the actual music in the background is peaking at like halfway, and then like I'm kind of peaking just, you know, into the yellow, so I don't know if the sound of the music is like too loud or whatnot. It doesn't matter if you mix them up either. I have that happen a lot. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I know. It happens. But yeah, the sound is perfect. Hell yeah, dude. Good, goody. Goody. Right, so the future of this stream and future streams is I'm going to be getting a brand new microphone soon, because I had my first Twitch payout, which was really good. I literally get paid this Friday as well. So in 5 days I get paid. And then on the 5th of June, which is my birthday, it's my birthday. It's my birthday and I'm getting money. So I'm hoping that with all of that money behind me, I can get a brand new microphone. I mean, the Blue Yeti's nice. I like the Blue Yeti. It's good. You have to do a lot of configuring with it though. You have to do a lot of messing around, a lot of stuff, and it's a bit like, So I want to get a real decent microphone, like a 200 quid microphone. Let's see what great voices your new mic can get. Yeah, I know. It's just, so the Blue Yeti's good. I like the Blue Yeti, but again, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I want better things. I want everything to just be like perfect. I want all of these streams to be like absolute fucking stellar, perfect. You know what I mean? So I want to. I'm hopefully going to be getting the Rode N1 microphone. One of the line. There's loads of different N1 microphone versions, but there's one for like 200 quid that I really want. That's like super good. Like a lot of YouTubers have been using them lately, like the proper like Rode N1 microphone, and I can't remember which one it is, but yeah, it's pretty good. I generally use an in-headphone microphone because nobody actually sees it. I never have a face cam. Oh well, fair enough then. But again, when I start doing this kind of stuff, I get very, like I said, very like perfectionist about it. So even though this is a good microphone, I know when I'm listening this over later now, you know what I mean, I'm gonna hear a lot of things I don't want to hear, and it's gonna really piss me off, and I'm gonna be like, this could definitely sound better, but like there's nothing I can really do about that, you know, until I get maybe a better microphone and edit the sound. Finally, someone read the Bible. I know. Well, you just missed it, man. I just did 2 chapters. I just finished the second 2 chapters. No. You know what? If you want me to, Mr. Avishai, because it's still quite early, to be fair, I can do another chapter if you want. Do you want me to do another cheeky chapter? I could do another cheeky chapter if you want. How have I just lost the chapter? Wait. I think I went backwards by accident. Anyway, by the way, hello people. Hi. Yes, please. I sick. It's 7:30 p.m. for me, so go for it. Hell yeah. Hey, thanks for the follow, my man. Sorry, I don't have any... I haven't got the sound on for the notifications because I don't want them distracting you guys while I'm reading. I have like a bass boosted default dance song for that, so I don't want to like... I don't want to be reading from here, and all of a sudden you'll hear a doodle-a-doo-doo-doo, doodle-a-doo-doo-doo-doo. You know what I mean? Like it'll probably like scare the shit out of you all as well. So I did turn notification off, the sound notification off, but it still pops up. So hopefully that's still okay. And yeah. Yes, please. Okay, cool. That's a clever move. I like it. Thanks. I did it for all of them as well. I had to make sure that like all of the notifications were off. The sound for them all was all off. So everything pops up. So if you do give a follow or a sub or anything, they'll still pop up. And then if I'm reading, say, a chapter in the middle of a chapter and I don't see it, I will shout you out at every single chapter. So I'm hoping to do multiple chapters in every stream. So what will happen is I'll have a break in between the stream, and if more people are kind of here in the stream, I can have like a little chapter discussion with them, so I can like finish one chapter that I'm doing and then just do a little chapter discussion about what's happened or what you guys theorize might happen in the next bit of the chapter. You know, then I can shout out a bunch of subs and followers and all that, and then jump right next into the next one. So it's cool. I'm surprised how I can never get jump scared. I haven't been in like 3 years. Yeah, I've been very desensitized to jump scares, only because I grew up with a cruel older brother and a vicious younger sister who was the devil when she was younger. So I was always the I was what you would call then Avishai, since you've been reading along with me, is I think I'm the bitchero of the family. Everybody would bully me because I was the middle child. So My sister was too scared to bully my older brother, so she would bully me, and then my brother, who's the older brother, would obviously bully their younger brother. So, yes, that sounds terrible. Exactly. God. I mean, I just heard the music and story. I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? Yes. Oh, yes, please. All right, cool. You know what? Let's do it then. Let's do. Right, I'm gonna have to change the title then to chapter 5. There you go. We're gonna do. You know what? Yeah, we're gonna read through chapter 5. We're gonna do 3 chapters today, boys. God damn, we're really going through some of these today, and we're smashing out this book like a madman. But yeah, this is the very first type of stream that I'm doing. Mr. Valaminev. Valaminev? Am I saying that right? This is the very first time I've ever done something like this. I thought I'd experiment with doing a cute little book reading, and so far Avishai seems to absolutely love it. So I hear you speak and the music back and the background music. No other background audio noise. Yeah, good. Which is why I didn't want the sound for the notification, so it's good that you can't hear it, which is good. That's what I wanted. But yeah, so this is the first ever thing that I've ever done with reading style stuff. This is the first ever book I decided to choose, and I'm just, in chapter 5, so it's still, quite new. I've only done one other stream, which was yesterday when I did this. So if I tend to mess up words or mess up character voices or anything, please bear with me. I haven't read a book in, well, the last time I read this, which was like a year ago, so I want to get back into reading, and I do a lot of streaming, so I thought I can kind of combine the two together and get really back into reading again. So you can call me Val, because my name is Hungarian and it's hard to spell. Oh shit, goddamn. I'm a basic white boy though. My actual name is Luke, so couldn't be any more basic. Big words are tough. We ain't no scientists. Yeah, I know. Yeah. George Miller's got some crazy vocabulary in this, mate. He puts out some crazy words in this. Anyway, right then. Let's do chapter 5 then, is it, boys? We shall do this together. Hope you enjoy, Val. Hope you enjoy this lovely little chapter for you. We shall get stuck right into it then. I wonder how often he uses the thesaurus.com, I wonder. I reckon he pulled an Eminem on us. I reckon he just read the dictionary. Just like that was his reading. He just read the dictionary like all the time. I reckon he just pulled an Eminem on us. Anyway, let's move on. So, chapter 5, my dudes. Let's do this. I can see that, yeah. Anyway, chapter 5. Thanks for the follow, my dude. I almost forgot to shout you out there. Thanks for the follow, Val. It was like so, but wasn't. Frank came too, but didn't. He was conscious. Oh, I haven't got the music on. Shit, wait. Bam. There you go. Oh, now we're really feeling it. Right then, let's move on. It was like so, but wasn't. Frank came too, but didn't. He was conscious, but of the sort that might accompany an out-of-body experience or an animated suspension. The first thing he perceived was that he was floating through an entirely new dimension, one of previously unknown physical qualities. He was free of gravity and completely weightlessness. His skin tingled, as though he were being lightly caressed all over. The light around him was distorted in any other worldly way and made everything look soft and beautiful. Pretty shadows and reflected lights danced around him. Time ceased to exist, and a beautiful silence encapsulated him. For Frank, it was a rare, beautiful moment, shattered only by the realization that he was floating face down in a swamp, about to choke. He rose from the waters, coughing and spluttering and retching and crying. He needed a few moments to regain full awareness, and when he did, misery was there, with a comprehension that traveling between realms was like death and rebirth each time. He sat in the shallow waters amidst a vast forest of mangroves. Strips of seaweed fluttered in slow motion under the water, tickling his calves and wrapping around his toes. Small fish darted under and out of the roots of the trees. Occasionally, flat creatures with gill slits that looked like stab wounds would hover over the sandy bed and slowly move away when Frank tried to kick them. Frank was relieved to find familiar ecosystems in other realms. He stood to look about over the branches of the trees. The mangrove forests around him extended to the horizon in all directions, but one. Above him was a sunless sky that sat hot and heavy like a bronze dome. Bat-like birds flew above and through the trees, which were infested with all manner of insects, spiders, and giant winged arthropods. Pale, flaky-skinned snakes slithered quite along the branches and across the surface of the water. To Frank, this place was eerily like the jungles of Okinawa on a bad day, and moving through it brought bitter memories and ominous sense that worse was to come. Pink Eye was nowhere to be seen. Frank didn't want to bring attention to himself, so calling for him was out of the question. The logical thing was to move in the only direction that didn't lead to more mangroves. In that line, above the forest, was a cluster of golden, rather picturesque foothills which skirted an enormous pointed mountain. It rose up and almost touched the rusty sky. The water he was wading through was never deeper than his waist, so only his real challenge was avoiding the fauna, half of which scattered in fear as he approached, and half of which moved towards him in hope of enjoying a warm meal. The last region of the mangrove was ankle deep, so Frank made quick progression towards the amber fields. Just short of the shoreline, he stopped and listened carefully. An odd sound could be heard from the nearby, but then ceased. Frank waited patiently, listening and peering. He could see nothing. He had hoped that it might be Pink Eye. Then the sound came again. Like a beast prancing on the spot in the muddy waters, Frank moved towards it more closely, trying to keep his sodden footsteps as quiet as possible. Again, the sound came, wild and moist, through the low-lying trees. It was near now, a ferocious and juicy sound, and Frank felt a fresh nausea rise up within him. Peering through a leafy scrub on his left, he saw a white creature with a bulbous yellow head and devouring the intestines of a still conscious beast kicking in the shallow waters. Though the creature seemed skittish, it didn't notice Frank watching him from behind. He moved around in a large circle to come into the creature's view, and when he saw Frank, he jumped and let out a hideous cry. "I'm a lemon!" It was an amped introduction. This creature looked like a warty lemon atop a thin radish. Frank kept his distance as the two sized each other up. "I'm a lemon!" I can't, my throat is so fucked. Give me a minute. I should have done this in the chapter break. "I'm a lemon!" the creature yelled again. Frank quickly assumed that debating might not be its strong point. "I'm Frank." Frank called back with a friendly wave. I'm a lemon, he heard again. Yeah, I got that, said Frank, before quietly mumbling, I'm in a land of morons. I'm a lemon! I'm a lemon! It called again, slowly approaching Frank. We know what they say about when you get stuck in a lemon, Frank chuckled. I'm a lemon! He was becoming more agitated as he spoke, his voice rising with each profession. Frank began to sense that this creature might actually be a complex soul, imprisoned in a lemony shell. As he drew near, Frank got a better look at his counterpart. He had an enormous yellow head, like a lemon on its side. Some lemons have a beautiful symmetry to them. This one did not. It was bulgy and lopsided and covered with pocks and warts, pure ugly. And the unattractiveness of the head was not helped by its eyes, which were vacuous and black, or the entrails of the organism dangling from the corners of its mouth. Whatever intelligence may have been buried within, it held an overall contentious of retardation. Why is this so oddly calming? You know what? This is why I wanted to read this book, because I wanted the comedy of it being like really nice and calming to a book that's like really fucked up. That was the whole point of this. The whole point of this was to have like a little joke, but like these reading streams are actually really good. They actually are quite calming. So I will read a proper book next time. But I do want to go through this first because it'll just be hilarious to do. I'm looking for pink guy, Frank said. The citrusy organism just stood there, looking at him, utterly confused. Pink guy, Frank continued in a slow speech. Pink humanoid who is actually a Rakenfile. Looks pink and sort of like a guy. I'm a lemon. Yeah, Frank said before mumbling. This could take a while. He took a few steps towards Lemon Man. Listen carefully. I don't have all millennium. I'm looking for Taking his approach as a threat, Lemon Man immediately set upon him with a flurry of blows and a manacle ripping with layers of razor-sharp teeth. Lemon, 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 was all Frank could hear before screaming at him as his head was buried in the ground. He rolled over to defend himself, kicking and occasionally punching. But the Lemon Man was too quick and too powerful. Again and again, Frank received the hard end of the warty lemon in the face. Over and over, it was pounded in his mouth, his eyes, and for good measure, his groin. All the accompanying sound of an animal in great distress. Frank was done. He had nothing left to fight off this creature. As the brown skies above him were about to dim to grey, he saw another white shape drop from a tree above him onto the Lemon Man. The new white creature planted itself firmly on Lemon Man's shoulders and began to shout and holler at the Lemon Man's began to shout and holler as the Lemon Man tried eagerly to throw the creature from him. Two of them formed a singular staggering, screaming beast, the white and the yellow on the bottom, bucking and convulsing in terrible distress, and the white and green one on the top, holding on for dear life and calling out in its entirely different dialect. Yes, he called out in a moist, triumphant, but still cautious manner. Yes. Frank sat up with an acute desire to have his eyesight and hearing checked. He had no idea what to make of this flurry of white and yellow and green. And this cacophony of... Cacophony? Wow, that's a weird word. This cacophony of lemons and yes. Eventually, the lemon man was able to free himself from the green and white creature and ran off, sour and sore. Frank's savior watched him flee before turning to Frank and helping him up. An oddly looking entity. He appeared unnervingly like a humanoid salamander. His body was slimy and white, while his head took a green amphibious form. Frank opened his mouth to thank him for coming to his rescue, but was cut off with a facepalm. Immediately, the creature then proceeded, seemingly from nowhere, a recorder, placed it firmly in his left nostril, and began to play a rousing rendition of an ancient tune. Wait, I can make this so incredibly immersive. Wait a minute. Here we go. Wait, let me just wait a minute. Trust me, this is gonna be amazing. Where is it? Here we go. Let's just do this again. Wait, let's just do this again. I watched out. Seemingly from nowhere, a recorder placed it firmly in his left nostril and began to play a rousing rendition of an ancient tune. Ah, a cultured man, said Frank, when he had finished the tune. I guess you're not here to help me and not to eat me? He was beginning to calm down from his beating. Yes. I'll take that as a yes then. Yes. Listen, I wonder if you can help me. That was beautiful, by the way. I wonder if you could play a few Oompa Oompa tunes for me later on. The salamander man looked perplexed, but continued to give his attention. I'm looking for Pink Guy, continued Frank. You haven't been, by any chance, seen him? Yes, he replied, shaking his head. This is like a meditation for me. I feel so calm and peaceful now. I know, right? I know. These streams are amazing. I'm so looking forward to doing more of these, my dude. This is gonna be so cool. I'm so excited. He replied, shaking his head. Frank was beginning to speak this guy's language. Well, would you mind helping me look for him? I don't know my way around here, and I'd hate to come across that lemon man again on my own. Yes. Frank somehow understood this to mean, Lemon Man is not bad guy. You just scared the shit out of him. That is all. The two of them walked out of the waters and along the dry shoreline, between the muddy banks of the mangrove to their left and the hazy fields to their right. I'm Frank, by the way, said Frank, checking his cranium and his testicles for the injuries. It was an odd series of gestures to accompany an introduction. Yes. He was going to explain where he'd come from and why, but stopped, realizing this would be an impossible task, if not a risky one, given the turn of events so far. They hadn't walked much further when they heard, off in the distance, the faint sound of a caterwaul. They hastened towards it, and as they drew near, they could hear just how intense the howling was. I forgot to put on the music. I'm sorry. I forgot to put it back on. Some creature was in terrible agony, and Frank could only hope it was Lemon Man. The screaming came from clusters of trees in front of a large rock formation. Frank ran towards it with Salamander Man galloping right behind him. Approaching it, Frank was able to see what he had been hearing, and it filled him with horror. They had found Pink Guy, still kicking and screaming. He had been noosed from the highest branch of a tree. Only this clearly wasn't the common hanging of a common land. Shadows passed in and out of his eyes and nose and ears and mouth, and with each entering and exiting, shivered in pain and fright. Not an orifice was left untouched, nor a fear left unstoked. The rope choked the breath out of him as the shadows violated his spirit. Pink Eye completely lost his colouring. Salamander Man was up the tree in a flash and produced, again, seemingly from nowhere, a knife with which he cut the rope. Frank caught him as he fell, lay him on the ground, and removed the noose from him. It took some time for Pink Eye to regain his composure. Salamander Man reproduced his recorder and began to play a soothing tune, which cut through the stilling air. As he did, shadows retreated, and a spirit of calm returned. You know what? I really need to set these streams up better so I can have a bunch of sound effects as well, and actually have Salamander Man play some recorded stuff. That'll be so sick for next stream. Oh. Ooh. Anyway. What took you so long? He eventually asked. Oh, wait, that was Pink Eye.
What took you so long?
He eventually asked Frank. Well, Lemon Man, that's what.
Ah, Lemon Man,
Pink Eye said, with a knowing nod. He was familiar with the lemon folk.
He could be a real pain in the ass.
He turned and saw Frank's new friend.
Hey, Salamander Man,
he said, cheering up.
Haven't seen you for a while.
Is this guy safe? Frank asked Pink Eye, pointing to Salamander Man.
Absolutely. Trust me on this. I can sense it.
Indeed, Pink Eye's ability to sense the good and evil in creatures was one of his defining traits, and a reason that he had been chosen to bring Frank to revelation. Yes. Immediately, Salamander Man and his recorder in his hand and shoved it into his left nostril again and began playing his favorite tune. It was beautiful. For a short while there, everything felt rice with the omniverse. Felt rice? Oh my god, I really am becoming Asian. Wait a minute. Wait. Salamander Man had his recorder in his hand, shoved it into his left nostril again, and begun playing his favorite tune. It was beautiful. For a short while there, everything felt right with the Omniverse, and Frank was happy. There we go. These are some top high level tier streams right here, boys. God dang it, why is this so beautiful? Mate, these are some stellar fucking streams right now, boys. We are on some Gucci shit right here. Okay, Frank said. What do we do now?
We lay low,
Pink Eye returned. He was back to full cognition now.
We have to stay here until your chromosomes are fully replenished, and then we look at getting you an audience with a higher power. I suggest we make for the woods along the foothills and use their cover.
Everyone was in agreement. So they forged a track through the long grass of the fields and didn't stop till they were in the shade of the trees and sipping water from a pond. Frank reclined by the still waters. Now this is more like it. I've had quite enough of that lemon and the noses and being groped by embryos. Pink Eye was tempted to ask about the embryos, but knew better than that.
Don't be fooled, Frank,
he said. Frank looked at him. Frank looked at him.
It's in the quiet oasis that the greatest peril lies. Always be vigilant, Frank. Vigilant, Frank. Always be on the watch.
What are you, clinically depressive or something, Pink Eye? He had forgotten that Pink Eye, just a few moments ago, had been hanging from a tree and tormented by demons. Can't you let a guy enjoy a quiet moment?
Enjoy it while you can, Frank,
Pink Eye said. But there was more a hint of resignation in his voice. Before he finished speaking, there was a loud rustle from the shrub. Behind him, and a brown creature sprang out and cried, "Be all!" Frank jumped up and immediately spooned Pink Eye. Who is this and what does he want? Frank whispered in his ear in a way that was much more creepy than concerned. The creature in front of them was another humanoid, brown from head to foot, except for an enormous black afro on his head, black sunglasses, and a huge set of white choppers in his mouth. He looked very happy to see these three visitors. "Buy up for the jump and happy," he said. I'm sorry, Frank said, sitting up and releasing Pink Eye. My filter's played up. Could you say it again? Ah, he said with a chuckle. If without or a buck is so likely, he said, before breaking into a tremendous cackle. Clearly he was having a wonderful time. Can't up to see it for Hoyle, he added, rubbing Salamander's Man in the chest. Yes, said Salamander Man. What is this guy talking about? Asked Frank.
He is Balderdash, said Pink Eye, a rake and file of small intellect, but enormous charm.
The creature stood there beaming, but no one had any idea what they were going on about. A Balderdash? Said Frank. Hey, so the last, said the brown one. He was thrilled. Does he have a name?
Don't know, said Pink Eye. But even if he does, we wouldn't understand what he was telling us. I suspect that he can understand us, but we can't follow him.
Far too the lucky, but cheese and excited. Yes, yes, Salamanders chirped in. You understand Balderdash? Frank asked him. He was starting to enjoy this communion. Yes. Ah, so you're both retards. He turned to the new entity in their trope. Brown guy, huh? Turd man. So, do you have a name? Frank asked. Ah, the brown one replied. A purse bucket of inflamed. No creature had ever looked prouder of himself. Salamander Man turned to Frank. Yes.
What did he say, Frank?
Asked Pink Guy. He said his name is Negi Generation 4.
I have to admit,
said Pink Guy, reflecting to Frank.
I never would have guessed that. Kind of an odd name, don't you think?
He whispered back to Pink Guy.
How do you say your name again?
He asked Negi Generation 4. In your language, I want to speak your lingo. Blood must live in the cuffing, he said. He was bouncing on the balls of his feet and pissing himself with joy. Negi Generation 4. Salamander Man confirmed in his language. Ah. But that's not what he said before. Frank was generally baffled.
Hence a boulder dash,
said Pink Guy, reclining back down beside the pond. They spent the rest of the afternoon catching their supper, and the evening roasting over an open fire. Frank recalled stories of Okinawa, slightly embellished for the telling, while Pink Guy occasionally interrupted with calls of cock and bull. Salamander Man played his flute whenever there was a lull in the conversation, which was rare because Negi Generation 4 talked virtually non-stop, pausing only to laugh at his own rather fabulous eccentrics. Indeed, Negi Generation's delightful chuckling. Did I just accidentally say cuckling instead of chuckling? Oh my god. Oh, Jesus Christ, what is wrong with me? Cuckling. This is some, like I said, boys, this is some top tier professional streaming right here, boys. Only the most professional of streamers you'll get you. Where was I? Fuck's sake. That is not how it's pronounced. No, God, no, please. Avishai, no. Right, anyway. Indeed, Negi Generation's delightful chuckling was the last thing Frank heard before falling into the most pleasant sleep he had had since childbirth. When he woke in the morning, the sky above him was pale yellow, and the higher foliage around him moved with the gentlest of breezes. The others were still sleeping by the remains of the fire that continued to smoulder, and a few small creatures were docilely picking up at what was left of their meal from the night before. Yet, all around them, on the floor of the forest, on the canopies of the shrubs, and on the branches of the trees, sat ever so delicately, a sea of translucent sapphires. Sapphires? I just can't speak tonight. Good God. I'll try this again. When he woke in the morning, the sky above him was pale yellow, and the higher foliage around him moved with the gentlest of breezes. The others were still sleeping by the remains of the fire that continued to smoulder, and a few small creatures were docilely picking up at what was left of their meal from the night before. Yet, all around them, on the floor of the forest, on the canopies of the shrubs, and on the branches of the trees, sat ever so delicately a sea of translucent spheres, ranging in size from grapes to watermelons. Despite the frivolity of the previous night and the peace he had found in the present company, Frank was gripped with alarm at the sight of these bubble-like apparitions. He rapped Pink Eye on the foot on walking. What? He rapped Pink Eye on the foot. On walking, he immediately sat bolt upright and stared at the phenomena, deeply troubled by it. His movement caused the others to wake, and as soon as they were looking in bewilderment at this sea of enormous suds surrounding them, they were all disturbed. Except for Neggy Generation 4. He promptly strutted over to one of them and picked it up. "A star with a jolly bee." With that, he opened his mouth wide and threw it in. He swallowed, his eyes sparkled, and then he let out a hearty burp. I got this one. "What did he say, Salamander Man?" Frank asked. Salamander Man, not sure if he had heard correctly, stuttered out his answer. He said, "Breakfast is served." Cackled the brown one, before picking up one of the larger bubbles and sucking it slowly out of shape and into his mouth. "Ah," he cries. "Father Frisk," he said. He said, began Salamander Man. "Yeah, we get it," said Frank, cutting him off. He ventured over and lifted one of the opaque spheres from a leaf, sniffed it, and then popped it into his mouth. "Hey," he said after some savoring. "That's pretty good." Fuck's sake. Sort of like a sticky strawberry gel, but with a touch of honey. He licked his teeth and gums. "Not bad at all." The others all promptly tucked into the servings on offer and enjoyed every moment of it. It was only Pink Eye, apparently, who had a moment of angst with the meal, having the misfortune to stuck a bubble in that he'd tasted rather like dog feces. He added very quickly that he had never actually tried dog feces, but if he had, that is the taste sensation that he would very much have expected. His other circular jellies, as he called them, were very much to his liking, especially the largest one he had consumed, which he said reminded him of caramel ice cream. They feasted on these treats until they could feast no more, which was rather timely because as the dome above them heated to a burnt gold colour, the bubbles melted into the ground, sustaining the plant life until nothing remained at all. The days passed like this, yet it was unclear to any of them how long the days were, and how many days, or months, or years it had been there. They simply existed, as though in their own ageless sphere. Frank asked Pink Eye why this was so.
"Time is relative in this omniverses, differing from realm to realm, and from dimension to dimension, affected also by the total number of chromosomes present in any region," he said. "When the Peace Lords gathered, for instance, there was such a massive abundance of chromosomes that time in that realm dominated the time in any other realm. It is not that time moved more quickly or slowly, but simply that it was dominant over the time specs of other realms and dimensions. By contrast, in realms where chromosomes were in scant supply, time was inferior to that of about any other realm about it."
In this environment, Frank had no idea how much his own chromosomes had been multiplying. "So you can grow chromosomes faster?" Oh wait, that was Pink Guy. Oh.
So you can grow chromosomes faster.
Pink Guy continued.
In regions where time is dominant, but you do so at your own risk, because there are greater numbers of higher tier entities there. The strong get stronger.
He continued by way of conclusion. It was uncharacteristically warm morning, possibly a Thursday in other realms, when Negi Generation 4 strolled over to Frank, slapped him on the back, and with an enormous guffaw, he said, "Tonsils go by the stave to fry, and why not?" Absolutely clueless as to what he had just said, Frank returned a slap on the back and laughed along hard with him. "So the donkey, and the kindly, the nuts." He tried speaking to the Negi language. In that very moment, the boulder dash suddenly fell to the ground, as rigid as a pole on an icy day. Frank wondered what on earth it was he said that made him stiffen like that. "All I said was..." But he could no longer remember what it was that he said. "Go up the mountain," Negi said. Shocked, Frank, Pink Eye, and Salamander Man gathered around him. "I understood him," Frank said, perplexed. "He said, 'Go up the mountain.'" "Go up the mountain," Negi repeated in the same mechanical voice.
Negi,
shouted Pink Eye, slapping Negi in the face as hard as he could.
"Snap out of it! Snap out of it!"
"What's wrong?" Frank asked him. He grabbed him by the shoulders and began to shake him violently.
"Come on, Negi! Snap out of it, son!"
Negi Generation 4 lay completely seized up on the ground. "Go up the mountain," he said again. The three other entities stared at each other. Suddenly, an entirely different vibe possessed them. Laughter, peace, and levity were replaced with somberness, fear, and gravity. "Go up the mountain," came the same cold command. Negi began to convulse. It was just a quiver at first, but it grew quickly into a full-fledged convulsions till he looked like a fish flopping about on dry land. With the spasms came a torrent of the same directives. "Go up the mountain. Go up the mountain." He was screeching it like a possessed man, and then he stopped. At first, the others felt quite sure he was dead. There was no movement, no breathing, no life. They slowly squatted around him and prepared to give him a solemn farewell. Frank was about to poke him in the cheek to see if he could elicit any response. Before he could, Negi Generation sat up on his elbows, flashed his smile, and declared, "Moons to the blue, Milky Way stirrups." He broke into his familiar cackle and jumped on his feet. He looked curiously at the three companions. "He wants to know why you're all staring at him, mate," Salamander Man translated. It was clear to the others that Negi had no idea what had just transpired. Frank paused before answering. "We're just looking for a very handsome fellow," he said. "Book off under the gross," he replied, bouncing on his toes. Again. "Oh, the yet." "Absolutely, my friend. Just what I was going to say," Frank encouraged him. Yet, the command that he had been incessantly repeated during Negi's missing minutes was not lost on Frank, Pink Eye, or Salamander Man. The discussion on the matter was mere formality. They knew they had to ascend the mountain. They just had no idea why. Negi couldn't understand why the three were so determined to make the climb. For as long as they were all together, he was happy enough. Boys. Negi is such a wholesome character. Negi Generation 4, he's so wholesome. He's so wholesome. The day was still young when they started off. None of them had gone up a mountain before, so they were complete novices when it came to the terrain. Yet, the mountain was, for the most part, even without treacherousness. As such, they made good progress. The morning events continued to weigh on their minds, so there was little discussion between them as they climbed. Negi Generation 4 picked up on this, and he, too, remained uncharacteristically quiet. Walking in single file, with their eyes fixed towards the summit, none of them noticed the swarm of creatures coming out of the swamplands and mudflats and woodlands following them up the slopes. It was Pink Eye who first sensed their presence.
"We're being followed,"
he said. Without turning around to see them, they had all paused and sat on the ledge to rest and look back down the mountain. There, while still at a considerable distance, was a multitude of creatures, great and small, predominantly brute beasts, but also some other Rakenfiles, and possibly some from the higher tiers. Their numbers couldn't be counted. They covered the foothills like pebbles on a beach. They stopped when the 4 Rakenfiles stopped. They continued when they continued. They retreated when the Rakenfiles turned towards them, and advanced irresistibly when they turned away. Sitting on a gentle rocky ledge, surveying the distant mangroves below, Pink Eye explained this happening to the others.
"It's you, Frank."
All 3 looked at the Okinawan.
"They sense it,"
he continued.
"They sense, Frank, that your chromosomes are multiplying at an unprecedented rate. They can feel it. It's rare that entities not of this realm pass through here, but they have never sensed from anyone what they are sensing from you."
This seemed so ridiculous to Frank that he was ready to dismiss it outright. But he had no other explanation for what was happening, so kept his thoughts to himself for the time being. More creatures began emerging from the trees and grasslands.
"The more I see what is happening in you around you, Frank, the more I worry,"
Pink Eye said.
"And the more we need to take care,"
he added with caution.
"You are what this world might consider royalty."
"Too minty and they're under it out," Negi said in a much more sullen voice that we're used to hearing.
"If we stay together, we'll all be fine,"
Pink Eye assured them. He was lying. He looked over at the landscape.
"The tiers are changing,"
he recalled in a still voice.
"We should move on."
On turning back face to the mountain, they were startled to see a hideous creature just a stone's throw from them. A reptilian humanoid. He was a fearful sight. His head was singed, a rusty distortion of what had once been, and its torso and upper limbs were burnt beyond usefulness. Scorched flesh hung and dripped from its body in large chunks. But its most terrible trauma was the lower half of its body. A charred mess of staggering legs, exposed organs, and twisted tail. He stumbled towards them.
"Come with me,"
he moaned. None of them moved.
"Come with me,"
he said again, gesturing with what was perhaps his only functioning limb. The wind picked up as he spoke and blew his stench towards them. It was Negi who took the first step.
"No,"
called Pink Eye. and Negi stepped back in line with the others.
He's condemned. He's soon to be one of the wretched, and he wants us to save him. But we can't. We can't. If we go with him, we risk being condemned ourselves. Have nothing to do with him.
Pink Eye turned and headed up the mountain at a brisk pace, with the others all following alike in manner, leaving the condemned creature to his morbid fate. At this point, they were more than halfway up the mountain, and the summit came into view. Yet, as it did, the gust of winds grew stronger, the sky began to grey, and a phenomenon they had never seen in that place before, and clouds began to form, also something they had never previously seen there. They pressed on. The higher they climbed, the fiercer the winds became, the thicker the clouds were, and the blacker the sky grew. Each of them were aware, if not terrified, of the ominous implications of this summit. Frank hoped that somehow, in reaching the top, they would have satisfied some cosmic requirement, and everything would return to normal. Pink Eye suspected something entirely more nefarious. Salamander Man and Negi Generation simply had the feeling that they were way out of their depth. By the time they reached the summit, it was completely shrouded in clouds. The wind blew in flurries, peals of thunder began to echo above them, and a smell of burning filled the air. Atmospheric conditions aside, there was a creepiness which none of them could source, yet which they all sensed vividly, a sulfuric stench which sickened them. It caused them to pull apart and observe each other with a hint of suspicion. Time stood still there on the mountaintop, an eerie emptiness in the midst of a storm. But that was it. The four entities looked at one another, unsure what to make of it all. They had satisfied the mythical command through Negi Generation 4 to go up the mountain, and they had experienced some highly unusual phenomena at the mountaintop. But there seemed to be little more to it than that. "What do we do now?" Salamander Man eventually asked. "Do we just go back down?" It was more of a suggestion than a question from Frank. Oh, from Frank? Oh, well, okay. No one responded. They continued to wait, looking about them and wandering on the spot like kids lost in a canyon. Pink Eye was about to suggest they return to the foothills when a swirl of dark clouds lowered before them on the very pinnacle of the mountain, not a tree length from them. The clouds slowed to a majestic stillness before parting to reveal a dark figure descending on the cushion of grey clouds that delivered them like a royal visitation. In the parting mountain-top air, they could see, without any restriction, the manifestation before them, and it was one of fearful ugliness. Every aspect of his presence, from his physical appearance to his spiritual disposition, proclaimed a sickening hideousness. Before him, leashed with very heavy chains, were two small but ferocious minions. They lashed out indiscriminately, clawing and leaping, snarling and drooling, and hungry for blood. As the clouds settled on the ground, the central creature squirmed and then rolled forth into a crouch position. Then, it moved towards them. The four climbers could sense nothing but outright fear. Frank felt a stabbing pain in the side of his neck. His face turned a ghostly shade of grey, and though it was cool, he began to sweat uncontrollably. The creature moved in awkward ticks, slowly at first, but occasionally in bursts, and in a line that would normally be associated with the stagger of a drunkard. Crab-like, it approached them, and though they drew back, it was upon them, right before them, and within them. The terror seized each of them, and they were unable to move. Though the spirits within them tried to flee, their feet remained, locked firmly to the ground. All the creatures that had been following them up the mountain had no such impositions placed upon them, and scattered as soon as they saw the presence. It was Pink Eye who first uttered the words, "Lord Chin Chin." The whole sky lit up as he said it in one enormous lightning bolt. They seemed to forget to flash back off again. The light from it revealed his appearance in its fullness. Not at least all of his eyes, which were stitched together, yet seemed to be looking in all directions at once. His face twitched again as he looked up at Frank with a mixture of longing and detestation. Sorry, I had a burp, my bad. Chin Chin, desu. The words gave Frank a tingling paralysis in his spine. Peace Lord's face twitched again as he considered Frank. Chin Chin, he replied. There was a curious, perhaps mystical connection between Frank and Lord Chin Chin that neither of them could identify, and that disturbed them both. But it did mean that Frank could understand Chin Chin's language without any misconceptions, where the other three only heard Oroa Chin Chin Daskayo repeatedly. Frank heard a language, ancient and complex, powerful and innate, and he responds in kind. "I have come for you," Frank heard the Dark Lord speak. His voice had a piercing authority and a childish whine. Sorry about that. I was trying to read that one thing. And a childish whine. Initially, Frank remained speechless, horrified to his core. But as Chin Chin repeated his claim, Frank found his voice. "What do you want with me?" he asked. "You dare speak to me without me speaking to you?" He looked incensed at this. "Have you no respect for higher powers? Have you no idea who I am and what I am capable of?" "What do you want with me?" Frank asked again. The Dark Lord convulsed with rage at this. There were more peal of thunders and rain pelted against Frank's face. "You speak when I tell you to speak." The words came out like exorcised spirits. I was close to that one. Well done to me there. His face suddenly jerked, as though receiving a fresh inspiration. "You don't fear me?" he said, sickened by the thought of it. "Oh, you're afraid of me, but you don't fear me." He looked up at Frank, who, to the relief of the others, commanded his full attention. "Fear comes from knowledge," he said, giving Frank an education. "Knowledge of good and evil, knowledge of one's true place in this earth, and knowledge that I am God." The last word spewed out, and as he said it, it reverberated around the mountain. With it, he cast his army powerfully towards Negi Generation 4, instantly decapitating him and knocking his lifeless body down the slopes of the mountain. Pink Eye and Salamander Man reeled back in horror at the sight of this. Never in their lives have they seen such a wanton disregard for innocent life. Frank watched the body slide down the rock face before shrugging. I quite liked him, Frank thought. What a shame. "Do I have your fear now?" Chin Chin asked him. Frank remained in silent terror. "I came here to kill you, Frank," He paused for effect. Fourth wall breaking in this book too, goddamn. That's literally what it says. It literally just says, he paused for effect. That's literally what it says. I don't like you. I despise you. I have in my very soul an intense desire to hurt you. I want you to feel all the pain of the omniverses. I want you to suffer like no one else has ever suffered before. I want your name to become synonymous with unspeakable pain. Frank already felt halfway there. God damn, how long is this chapter, dude? This is a fucking swole chapter, boy. God damn. Is it next page? Oh, it is. Oh, shit. So we got this page, and then the end of this page, and then that's it. We got 3 pages, boys. 3 pages. We can do it. But I won't, Frank. If it were possible. This chapter is thick. If it were possible, there were a slight softening in his voice. I have other plans for you. Frank gave Chin Chin his full attention. The other two had no idea what he was saying. You have an impressive rate of increase in your chromosomes, Frank. And the rate it is increasing. This makes you useful. So I will give you the honor of allowing you to make a deal with me. I will return you back to your human world and allow you to live relatively free of pain. And in return, you will give me your chromosomes. What sayest thou? Did you choose, Frank? Eternal suffering of the highest order, or an obscure life without excessive chromosomes? His face ticked again, as if it functioned as punctuation. Though eternal suffering of the highest order was clearly not the choice to make, Frank lamented at the miserable option that the other choice left him. And so, with sad resignation, he said, I'll give you my chromosomes. I want to hear it again, the Dark Lord said. I'll give you my chromosomes, Frank repeated. Very well. When I leave here, it will be with your chromosomes, and I will be transporting you to a secret place far from here where you can replenish your chromosomes in relative peace and quiet, and where I can find you anytime I want. Is that understood? Yes, Frank said solemnly. After I have left, go back down the mountain. Your transport will be complete before you get to the bottom. With that, the Dark Lord Chin Chin crawled back to the pinnacle of the mountain and curled into a ball. The wind picked up once again. Thunder and lightning cracked, and hailstones hit the size of limes, fell on all above them. Very dark clouds slowly enveloped him, and he was gone. Very quickly, the clouds dissipated. The weather cleared, and the sky returned to its golden glow. The 3 remaining Raked files came together, observed Negi Generation 4's remains for a while, and then headed back down to the mountain. To be fair, if I was Frank, I would have chosen death. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have. I think I would have done what Frank did. I would have been like, I want to go home. I don't care. At this point, Frank still doesn't want his He doesn't want to multiply his chromosomes. He doesn't want to be anything higher than a mere mortal. So the idea of him staying and going back to Earth and just being a mere mortal is probably just what he wants, really, in it, you know. He's just like, whatever, you know. It's what I want. I don't want to be the higher thing. I just want to be down there with the mere mortals on Earth with my homeboys, you know? I would have chose death because screw that guy in particular. What, Chin Chin? Yeah. Yeah, Chin Chin bad dude. He bad guy. No, the relaxation sleeping music has stopped. I have to replay it. Boom. There we go. I clicked replay, boy. Let's get back on it then. One last page to go, baby. Physically, the track down was somehow more difficult than the one up. Psychologically and spiritually, they were all changed. Entities for the mountaintop experience. And as they descended, Frank shared with Pink Eye the conversation he had with Chin Chin. When he finished, Pink Eye stopped and looked at Frank with a hint of relief on his face.
I wonder.
His voice trailed off. What? Frank asked.
I can't be sure.
He thought some more. Frank waited as a gust of wind blew between them.
But I suspect that Chin Chin might not be a god,
he said.
You could have fooled me,
Frank returned.
Oh, he's powerful. He can control atmospheric conditions, and he can take life. But he is not God.
How can you be so sure?
What he does is the work of a peace lord. God.
Pink Eye paused to find the right words.
Wouldn't need your chromosomes.
Oh shit. Oh. God won't need your chromosomes. You don't need that. Chin Chin lie, man. Goddamn, what a plot twist. Frank wasn't too sure whether to be relieved or not, or more anxious at hearing this. Yet, the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. The further down the mountain they travelled, the better they all felt, until halfway down, when a spirit of utter levity, oh my god, I can't speak, when a spirit of utter levity came upon them. Salamander Man produced his recorder and began to play a sprightly tune. Pink Eye actually began to skip along as he played. As they drew near the foothills, just above a series of steep cliffs, there was a sudden and very powerful earthquake. Earth? Why did I just say it like that? Oh my god. I'm so glad I'm going to be done with this chapter in a minute, because I can't even say basic words right now. We're calling them earthquakes from now on as well. Alright, Avishai, that's another word we need to add to our list of words we should be saying. Earth is now how it is pronounced. Congratulations. Thanks. Great. There was suddenly a very powerful earthquake. The whole mountain seemed to bend and start cracking. Holding onto a sharp rock ledge for dear life, Frank's forearm was cut from the wrist to below. Oh my god. Frank's forearm was cut from wrist to elbow. And then 3 of them were tossed from their thin ledge and fell bouncing and flopping down the cliff. They landed together in a circle of blood, broken and cut and bleeding and torn, groaning and moaning and screaming and cussing. Egg-sized rocks and boulders the size of large dinosaurs fell on them until they were buried under a small mountain that rose from the foothills, like an altar to a deity. When the dust had settled, there was nothing left alive in that land, higher than a brute beast. Ooh boy. that is the end of chapter 5, my dudes. My dudes. God damn.